Thank you. My name is Sarah Patel. I am from Nativo. If you weren't here earlier today or you're not familiar, we're a storytelling platform that really gets its strength from organic, authentic engagement and connecting outcomes to that content. So something that's supremely important when we think about brands that stand the test of time. And today we've got Kelly and Nikia, and I want you guys to introduce yourselves and then also tell me the very first brand that you were a loyalist for.
Do you want to go first? You. Good. I'm Nikia Reveal. I have been at Huntington Bank for about 5 years. I'm the brand director there, so I do brand strategy and the creative execution of the brand, so a little bit of a creative director role as well. Prior to that, I managed the brand at The Ohio State University. So lots of long-term brands in my portfolio. I think the first brand I was a loyalist to was Sesame Street. I was a big fan of Sesame Street. But I think having heard brand presentations by Sesame Workshop and PBS Kids and things like that, I think their approach to brand building is really unique and interesting. And what they were doing at the time in the 70s when they were building that platform was really unique and interesting and kind of set the stage for what children's television became. So.
I'm Kelly Cahill. I work for Shop Simon. Previously, you probably saw that was Shop Premium Outlets. We rebranded 2 weeks ago. So this is a very appropriate conversation. I'm still recovering. But I'm the vice president of marketing there. I've been there for 2 years. Yesterday was my 2-year anniversary. We've been on a marketplace for 5 years now. So we are the marketplace of Simon Malls. So we basically brought them all online, which is a super fun experience. Go check us out. Prior to this, so I have been at brands, legacy brands, Nike, Adidas, Victoria's Secret, Keds. So I've had a lot of experience with fashion and sports and brands that have a really strong following. I am originally from Oregon, so my favorite brand of all time has always been Nike. I had the privilege of working there. Rivaled with New Kids on the Block in the 90s, but I definitely, I mean, my entire bedroom. And then I saw them recently a couple years ago, so I'm still a loyalist to NKOTB. So I think that's my story. Where I went to the University of Oregon, so I have been a Nike loyalist for a very long time, even though I did work at Adidas. SUNY Ohio State, we're now in your league, so good luck to you. We are the only ones on our street that fly the U of O flag, and probably in the entire state.
All right, great. So I was thinking my first was going to be the Blue Box, Kraft mac and cheese, and it's something that you start when you're very, very young, and then you don't think about it again until you're older. Similarly to Sesame Street. So thinking about that and the brands that you were originally loyal to, I want you to tell me a little bit about how cyclical your brand life stage is. Obviously, there are really big gaps. There's like 40 years between when you became like original fan of something, and for banks, that's even longer. So I'd love to hear a little bit of that life cycle.
Yeah. So you usually get your first bank account when you go to college. That's changing a little bit now. We're pushing kids even younger because kids need to store and use their money at a younger age. And then you pretty much stay with that bank until something goes wrong. So the life cycle of a bank customer is really long. It's really kind of strange. But we do brand building in community involvement and things like that, so that you're aware of the bank when you do have a problem. When you are looking for a bank to switch to, we want to be in that consideration set. So we need to be where people are, no matter where that is, and kind of make sure that you are a visible solution to a problem that they might be having. So. There's not a lot of differentiation in bank accounts, and especially as the Fed regulates banks more and more, you're comparing a lot of the same things. So just having a really strong brand and a really differentiated value prop is really what we have to do.
Ours is a little trickier, so we are being a retailer. But I would say if you went back in time when malls were popular, I think everyone can remember outlet malls, meet me at the mall, meet me behind the mall, as Taylor Swift says. I think there are like different components of the mall, and now it's graduated into a marketplace and into a place where you can shop online. And how do you keep it entertaining, and how do you keep it like omnipresent? So I think that's our next challenge and goal, is like, how do you connect that physical mall space and now what we are as the digital mall, and turn it into something that is an experience both in store and now online. So we're connecting it now. The rebrand helped us connect. We have a bunch of things coming in 2025 that will help connect the shopper even more and to become a loyalist to the brand. And that's really kind of where like the direction that we're going is to. We're not going to fight Amazon. We're not going to like Walmart or Target or go up against any of those, but we are going against other malls. So if you think about different outlet malls, a Westfield, et cetera, like come online and shop us, or go to a Simon mall. So we're helping grow the Simon brand, which is typically a property group, not necessarily something you think as a mall. So now my job is to help push that brand as well.
If you haven't noticed, there's an interesting juxtaposition between these two brands, but there's actually so much in common. So obviously this is about creating brands that stand the test of time. And one brand is over 100 years old, 166, right?
160 in 2 years.
160 in 2 years, okay. And then one that is turning 5 this week.
Yeah, it's
Happy
her 5th birthday.
And so, they're both proving themselves to be successful in a myriad of ways. And if you didn't know, most companies actually rebrand every 7 to 10 years. So kind of that 7-year itch. And I know that both of you are in the midst of some changes with your branding strategy. Would you share sort of where you are with your current brand evolution?
So like I mentioned, there's not a lot different about banking products. So really you have to have a strong brand platform to communicate who you are and what you stand for. A checking account is a checking account. For my product partners would hate that I say that, but for most intents and purposes, a checking account is a checking account. So we are looking at who the bank wants to be in the future and looking at a national expansion. So as Huntington grows and expands into new markets, how do we deal with things like the Huntington Learning Center? The Huntington brand mark is just Huntington right now. Do we have to add bank to it? Do we have to tell people literally what we are as we go into these new markets and things like that? So that's kind of the evolution that we're looking at. And we're really looking at kind of banking as a whole and how people interact with their banks now versus how they did. Banking has primarily been a utility to this point. You need a place to store your money and access it when you need it, and you need it to be safe and secure. But what we're finding is people are moving more towards money as a craft. It's something you get good at. Like, I want to be good at money. And who do you go to when you have questions about that? Outside of family and your friend group, and money is a weird thing to talk about. Like, if you have a real question, who do you go to? So we're looking at how that kind of relationship with money is evolving a little bit and finding out how we can play in that area.
Wow, we're in it. So we're 2 weeks in it, but I think the biggest part is what's coming next and how we connect, like, Shop Simon as a brand. So before being shop premium outlets, really that outlet connotation is what stuck, meaning discounted, or from a B2B perspective, getting more brands to partner with us. A lot of brands are like, well, we're not an outlet, or we don't want to be on your site or have that connotation. And really it was, well, we only have like 4 or 5 actual factory or outlets on our site. Most brands come to us and we get their sale product. So that's really what it has been, and being Shop Simon allows us to bring more brands on, whether it's their first mark, second mark, third mark, final sale. Really a clear out space, unless you're a really amazing brand like Adidas, who actually just puts all their sales stuff. Check us out. We have like up to 60% off right now on Adidas. So like that's really the evolution for us. I mean, it's again, there's more to come. I think there is an incredible opportunity that we're seeking out with loyalty and rewards programs that we're spearheading and kind of going through what that looks like from a physical to a digital space. I think there's a lot of branding and, I mean, just so much potential from where we are now to where we're going.
So especially going through rebranding, your audiences are going to evolve and change. How do you ensure that you are really talking to your new audiences that are interested without isolating those loyalists that you've had for years?
I seem to be going first and
Okay.
answering.
Well, I
all
can
the
go. I don't mind.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So I think with the mall, it's really getting people to understand that you can now shop online, and typically the consumer that we would look at is a value shopper, a mom, kind of a typical kind of 40 to 50-year-old, but likes a value. And what we've really started to look at is how do we start to bring in the Gen Z, and how do we start to get people to be loyalists to a place to shop. They are going back to the mall. We're starting to learn that. We hired a Gen Z agency. They're incredible. They are all Gen Zers. Literally, they were my son's age, so it felt like really, really strange, like partnering with them. But it was really wonderful because they actually know exactly who they're talking to. They have cohorts. They have people that they can source from to talk to us about the mall and to talk to us about what they're finding online and how we can connect those two. And then it's also looking at different payment options. Like Gen Z, they're not big on credit cards. So like that buy now, pay later doesn't really work for them, or credit doesn't work for them. So how do you reward them then with a debit card? And there's an incredible company called Catch that like we instituted as a payment option that can like reward you for paying with your debit card. So there were just a bunch of ways that we're looking at the new audience to bring them in, and looking at some of those other Gen Z brands that can help us grow and bring them on the platform as well, but still staying true to the consumers that have been with us for not only 5 years, but also Simon consumers with a rewards program, loyalty, et cetera.
Yeah, I think staying true to who you are, right? Your brand personality doesn't change a lot. You make sure that your current customers still recognize you and are still loyal to you, but you can flex and grow in different areas. How that, I think, shows up for us a lot is fintechs and neobanks, things like Chime and Ally, companies that can't call themselves a bank, and how the younger audiences are gravitating towards these kind of new ways to manage their money, and then educating them about how that's different from a bank and how your money's protected in a bank. It's backed by the federal government, and making bank not a bad word, making sure that people know that that means trust and security and things like that. So there's some, I don't know, the financial industry is really interesting right now with some things that are happening. So yeah, I think just staying true to who you are, but like flexing where you need to bring in new people.
I feel like I jumped ahead when I asked that question, and I want to take a step back because everyone has to have a bank, everybody shops. So how do you even start that process? How do you even know who your ideal audience is that you're trying to go after and connect with them? So even before you decide on a loyalist or a new audience, how do you decide?
Well, we're for everyone. Everyone wants to shop, right? I mean, we'd say we're going to be greedy and we want everyone to come to our site. But I think you start with who you have and what you know, and you start to take a look at your audience, right? Like your actual consumer, who are they? How deep are their pockets? What are they looking for? You start to see trends. You can build the consumer profile, and then you also build who you want your consumer to be, right? I mean, it's the same thing, and I'll just reference Nike. Like when I was at Nike, the actual consumer, the demographic was like a 55-year-old male. That was the Nike, and probably still is, the Nike consumer, but you wanted to associate with a 17-year-old athlete, right? Like that's who we would go for, and everyone wants to feel like a 17-year-old athlete. So that's really what you personify in your marketing and your communications, and they still do it today, and that's very similar to us in a way of we know who shops, but we also want to bring in that younger demographic. So you got to make shopping a little fun. It's got to be rewarding. You have to put brands in front of them that they understand, but you also have to use technologies that they're into and savvy, like starting to introduce AI, other ways to search, like load an image. I mean, you can do this on our site right now. Load up an image that you saw on the internet, and we will produce a bunch of outfits for you that look just like it. Like starting to do that, a lot of technology that they're used to. Like my kids teach me a lot of this stuff all the time, right? And so it's using what they know to bring them in, and I think that's important. Will my mom use that technology, who shops on our site all the time? No, but I already have my mom. So now we need to bring in the other target demographics and go for them.
I think looking at your customers and modeling kind of your marketing set based on who your customers are, and then expanding from there. So as we roll out new products, banking for kids, dependent banking, that type of stuff, we kind of go into these other areas that that kind of model after who our customers are now, I guess.
How do kids bank?
I'll let you know next year.
Okay.
With
teaser.
Huntington.
What a teaser.
They bank with Huntington.
Bank with Huntington.
My kids just ask me for money. I don't know.
A lot of, well, you know, cashless is a lot of the venues that my kids are in are cashless, and a lot of the kids banking options now you can't use digital wallet with. They're restricted in that way. So having a traditional bank account that is tied to a parent for controls, so you can like set parameters and controls on that. But functions just like your bank account. So you can add it to your digital wallet. You can use it through Venmo and PayPal and all of the Cash App, all the things.
Like Uber for kids, too.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Very cool. You both also have a unique angle where you have physical locations, but you're not actively trying to drive people, drive foot traffic. At least that's not a priority. Can you speak to how you kind of work around that or work that into your strategies?
Shop Simon isn't, but Simon is. We certainly are both. And now that we're closer together, the rebrand actually brought both of the brands, malls and outlets, closer together. So we are focused on making sure that consumers can also find a center if they are shopping online for us. That's one thing that we do. And as well as when we get into the holidays, I mean, Santa at a center or at a mall is a really big deal. I mean, people fight and like gloves are off and people need to get their time slot with Santa. So that is something that we also like coordinate on our side. We have a broader reach digitally to more markets than the malls do because they only expand, within a 50-mile radius. So we have the entire nation that we can like start to cover. So we do try to move people into the mall for events because then that also triggers a shopping experience, right? And then they do the same. Like in the malls, there are QR codes and boards and like earn rewards at Shop Simon. Like we are playing back and forth with each other. It's only been happening for 2 weeks now, but once you find a mall or an outlet in Cincinnati, let me know what you see. But that's definitely the way we're going back and forth.
Well, you can probably count on one hand the number of times you've been inside a bank in the last 10 years. You want to know that the physical location is there if you need it. You don't want to ever go there. Most people don't ever want to go there. And I think COVID proved that you don't need to go there. Everything you need to do with banking can be done digitally, online or on your phone. So we still have a physical expansion plan because our physical locations are billboards for us. It's like a weird sense of security. So you need them to be there. And we still create a really great welcoming experience in those physical locations. So it still has to be the greatest thing when you walk in. But we build them knowing that people won't come to it is a really strange thing.
It's like the opposite of Field of Dreams.
Right, yeah. Build this, make it beautiful. People probably won't come, but that's how it has to be there because you're not, at least in the majority of our consideration set, if there isn't a physical location available, that is a drawback for choosing a bank. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, we talked a little bit about Santa, so I do want to go back into seasonality and being a shopping brand, right? You're talking back to school and Labor Day sales and the holidays. How do you make sure that you're not just carved out as like a holiday brand, and how do you stay top of mind the rest of the year?
Yeah, it's twofold. So what we kind of communicate it from a business perspective and very much from a marketing perspective is there's a birthday happening every day. There's some type of an event happening every day where someone needs a gift or someone needs an outfit or someone needs, something. So we try and look at the cultural moments beyond holiday, beyond, some of those big, I would say, tentpole moments within back to school, holiday, et cetera, that there's always something that someone needs. And it's finding what that is. And then we bridge the gap with our brand partners, which is, we have like over 1,000 brands like on our site. So we bridge the gap with them. I'm like, wait a minute, this is like kind of a a dead moment or a dead week. I won't jump ahead to the election week, but like there's like a week when we talk with brands and Google and like, wait, what's happening during this week? It's kind of dead. And we'll get with the brands and be like, can you give us a really good promotion? Like, what can we look at can we do a category promotion? Can we talk about shoes this week? Can we talk about, do we just do a singular brand like Adidas, as I mentioned before? Is it jewelry? Or like, what can we really talk about that is like kind of a deep discount to drive people in than to see the rest of the site? So we work ahead and we look at like what we've comped year over year. And we look at all the data to really understand what we need to do to drive business during some of those off weeks. And then also layer, growth within those big moments, right? So back to school is a big one. And of course, holiday, everyone shoves the budget into the last 10 weeks of the year. So how do we like continue to grow and fight for space? And we're a small brand, so we don't have a lot of budget in those moments. So we have to use more of our budget in places where we can win, where brands aren't spending as much.
So let's talk about it. We were talking about the election and how it affects brands across the board. Everybody's thinking about it. Are you going to lean in or lay low?
We're not leaning in. We're not a political brand by any means. But we are strategically giving consumers some retail therapy or a retail break during this time. So I would say like we partnered with Google and we were like, what happens during that week? A lot of people are afraid of spending money leading up into that week. No one knows what's going to happen, whatever side you're on. And we thought about, well, what if we, very much like Amazon does Prime Day, now in October, if we launched gifting much, much sooner in October, and then also layered in like an earn during this period, and then you get to use like your gift card, kind of a burn period during election week, and give our biggest discounts, almost like Black Friday during election week, to bring people back in, right? So start to build traffic during a time, like we might be the only ones. We're not talking about anything. We're just giving people a break. Little retail therapy, promise not going to hurt your wallet. Like that's the idea. Just trying to be a little more strategic, like saying something without having to say anything during a lot of those moments. And we do that a lot during that, like we just have value prop that consumers latch onto.
We're not leaning in, that's for sure. I think for us, it's about pricing us out and availability of stock. I think we have some new assets that we're trying to get in market right now. And I think we're just kind of holding back a little bit and we'll plug in as we kind of read the tea leaves and see what happens. Yeah.
Okay, so obviously more towards finances, health, wellness, family are all really important things. And the more important something is, the more you need trust, right, before you agree to purchase them. And so you're going to need several touch points along the way, to build that trust. What are you doing to really, garner that with your audiences?
Yeah, I mentioned leaning into the fact that we're a bank and that you can feel secure in putting your money in the bank, and taking kind of the dirty word out of bank as much as we can. But the reality is that banks fail these days, so it's a real thing. We are leaning into our heritage, the 160-year-old thing. We've been around for a long time. Even in the markets that don't know us, we'll say, we've been around for 160 years. It's nice to meet you. We're doing some things to kind of balance out that. But we're always on from a brand standpoint. There's air cover brand campaign that's always on, and then touch points throughout the funnel. And like I said, trying to be where people are, that when they are having a problem with their bank, that Huntington is in their consciousness and in consideration when they need to switch.
So you also have an added hurdle, considering how infrequently people change banks. What's your strategy there? Do you hook them at the beginning and just nurture them forever?
We try. I think Yeah, especially the Huntington brand. It's a legacy brand. It's a family brand. You most often know about it because your parents banked with Huntington. Where we're leaning into these new areas, both regions that we haven't been in before and people don't know us, but also younger kids, introducing kids to the Huntington brand, or not. I said kids. You know. New bankers, new to market. So yes, we're touching them as much as we can and nurturing them throughout the process.
Okay, so I feel like all my questions are in a row for you, but knowing that you're really looking at these audiences, you're trying to nurture them, you also have to be very wary of safety and regulations for any finance brands. What are some of the parameters that you're following and that you're staying far away from?
Yes. Legal risk and compliance looks at everything I do. Everything. It's intense.
They're watching right now.
Yeah, they are. They're reviewing this. I've learned a lot. There are a lot of things that you wouldn't realize as a consumer that I can't say. I can't tell you that I can give you advice on your money, because an advisor is a licensed thing. It parallels the medical field a lot. It's super interesting, and a little turn of phrase can sometimes set off a whole issue in my life. But yes, in the world though, where the number one search thing that we show up in SEO is how to write a check, because kids have never seen a check. They don't know what a check is. There's some balance there, right? Where you have to give some like really, really basic banking information, and then you have to also have those conversations about safety and security and risk. And so you got to be at both ends of that spectrum.
Constant education.
Yes.
Okay. With that, and this is kind of for both of you, but how are you monitoring your brand health? Obviously, this is about, this whole idea of this internal brand love. How are you really, noticing that you're doing well? What are your success metrics? If you could speak on that, that'd be great.
2 weeks in, So prior to the rebrand, we really looked at it from an overall perspective on. We don't have a ton of tracking. We're super young. Not a lot of budget for things, but we look at it from like a data perspective, from a consumer, like overall, like consumer inquiries, what's happening within the app. We read every single customer comment. We look at everything from that perspective, and then just year over year growth. Every year we have grown. I think last year we doubled, from 2022 to 23, quite significantly. And so, we're looking to almost do that again next year, in 25. And so we look at like the brand that way. And now with Simon, being closer with Simon, we look at the health of the brand. They're a public company. Our side, this is wild, but our side is not. So the marketplace is not. It is a separate business entity altogether and treated as such, even though it's part of the Simon brand. David Simon's a very smart businessman. It's set up that way. So we will look at the brand health, like how both brands now are rising, right? Like that's the idea, is that Simon, the power of that brand kind of gives us validity in the marketplace, and we give a little bit of authenticity for that online e-commerce shopping experience. So we know what's best in that space. So we're bringing Simon online, and Simon is bringing our brand up, and that's how we're going to start to look at it. And we'll start to look at it the overall health, and I'm sure Simon will look at it from their the stock, et cetera. They'll look at it from that regard.
Brand health metrics. We always score really high on things like friendliness and approachability and trust and things like that. But where we might tweak a little bit and kind of follow the measurements is on things like SMART or guidance or something like that. So as we're shifting a little bit, we might track a little different attributes than we would have in the past.
How quickly do you feel that you can pivot when you get these sort of signals that you're receiving back from clients? Do you have the flexibility to do that?
We read them quarterly. I would say to really see a change, it takes about a year for us.
Do you, I mean, you have to, right? You've got such quick promos.
Yeah, we are quick. We're reactive to seasonality. We're reactive to what's going on in the marketplace. Brands will call our brand managers and want, a promo within the week, want to get a paid spot. We're starting to turn more into also a media company where we sell a lot of paid placements, right? Trying to get the health of the bottom line, so being a startup, basically a startup company. So that's something that we're really, really looking at as well, is how do we start to give brands what they need, but also clearly the consumers, because sometimes brands want our audience, but not necessarily all of our audience wants the brands. So we do have to play it by ear a lot, and we are very reactive. And we can only, it's coming from a Nike or an Adidas where you work because of the product life cycle. When you think about footwear, it's about 18 to 24 months. So you are working very far ahead with plans. I'm working about 2-week increments now with plans and creative, and we're designing and doing things on the fly like that because it's a true marketplace situation. So it's very different and very reactive.
That's great. So especially since I think it's something like 3/4 of people out there are constantly earmarking brands when they're seeing things and reading them. So being able to pivot is very important. For the rest of the time, and I know we've kind of talked about you're trying to fill that funnel with education. How are you kind of filling the funnel during the rest of the year, kind of as your always on strategy going against those promos? I guess that's you.
Oh.
I guess that's you. I asked you both.
Sorry. Repeat that very last
So,
part.
so you have these always on promos that are running. What's your always on strategy to kind of keep that funnel full so that you're kind of moving them down with the promos and top to bottom funnel activations?
Yeah, we definitely work now more in clearly the lower funnel with the consumer, more of that connection standpoint. I think as we grow and start to get more brand dollars, we will move more into upper funnel, and that's really where the loyalty program and some of the rewards program come into play with talking to consumers, at that level, and really what is doing more brand campaigns and earning in mall, earning online. There's not a ton of brand awareness right now in that upper funnel space. Really, everything kind of goes into that mid to lower, but we try and peek our head up a little bit during some of those bigger moments and make a play. How do we get more involved with Fashion Week, right? We have a lot of we have your outlet brands, a lot of Nautica, Guess, Adidas, Coach outlet, et cetera. And then we also have your luxe brands. We have Gucci, we have Versace, we have all of those brands as well that we sell. So there's quite the spectrum for the diversified consumer. So I think we can hit all of those notes depending on the season. But really we are locked in on Google Analytics and our affiliate program. That is where I would say 80% of our marketing dollars go, and that is what we read every single day.
Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes left, so I'll do a final takeaway, and then we can do some Q&A. What would you say the most important thing is to remember when trying to build a brand that stands the test of time?
This is my Post-it. So I have a Post-it I have several Post-its that sit at my desk, but the one that I talk to my team about and we reiterate to each other is making the consumer the hero of our story. So every time we try and make a change or we do something, we make sure the consumer is at the center of it. I think when you start to talk about, it's easy for us right now in that lower funnel because we are connecting to the consumer almost directly. I think as you move up the funnel and start to do brand things, you kind of get so into your own brand and what you want the brand to be and what you want to change or what you want it to stand for. And a lot of times the consumer gets lost when you start to play for the brand. So I think it's really about, what does the consumer care about? And a lot of times you have to take your brand down a notch or two to make sure you're really hitting the points of the consumer. So we talk about that all the time. That's great to lead with a really cute line, but you know what? The consumer wants to know if it's 50% off or not. So we need to get that over the top. And then there are other times when we can, really talk about ourselves and give some, brand love out there.
That's really good. I'd say for me, it's get out of your own way. I have a really strong legacy brand that I'm working for, and kind of the nuance and the little features of the creative and things, I get overwhelmed like in my own head about like making them all perfect. Huntington has a really great brand following already, just kind of like letting the brand live and kind of tell you what it needs, I think is how you kind of like let it live. So it's kind of like listen to your consumer, and kind of get out of your own way.
Love it. Okay, we've got a few minutes for questions, if anybody has any.
For Huntington, as you expand into new markets, so everyone knows you here in Columbus, how do you think about building brand love in new markets?
So we just did a really deep dive into Denver, and went out with a completely different brand approach. So we had been in Denver for 2 years, and we didn't do anything differently. We just kind of treated it like our primary territory, and that didn't work. We didn't gain any sort of brand recognition or anything like that. We were still really low in recognition, and we knew we had to do something differently. So we kind of did a lot of research and a really deep dive into what makes Denver unique, and went out with a whole new campaign approach, from top of funnel all the way down, that was all about guidance. So a guide is a thing in Denver. It's not a thing that we recognize here in the Midwest so much, but a guide is a job that you have. So, and signs are the kind of physical manifestation of that guide. So we did a creative campaign around guiding you on the trails versus guiding you with your money, and did a signs campaign. So not something that would resonate well in the Midwest, but so we learned that we had to take a completely different approach as we move into these new markets, and we had to take a moment to introduce ourselves, to get to know the neighborhood. My favorite thing, and Brian will remember this, is I once put a billboard in St. Paul that said, "Hey, Minneapolis." That was not a good move. So that's something you don't do. Yeah, we read our maps a little funky that day, but we went into the Twin Cities, and and we're one billboard over the bridge, and so don't do that.
Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you both so much for your time. Appreciate it.